What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be comparing two very legendary Kodak film stocks. The first one being Portra 400, a very classic, tried true, color negative film stock that I'm sure everyone has used before. It's very good for its dynamic range. It has those warm Kodak colors that everyone's kind of used to. Also has great skin tones, so it's a good pick for portraits. The other film stock that we're going to be using is Kodak Ektachrome E100. This is actually a color positive slide film. I've only used it a few times, but overall I really enjoyed my results. But it's known for being super contrasty, very sharp, a little saturated, but also still having those true to life skin tones, so it's also another good choice for portraits. In this video, you'll see some behind the scenes footage from a couple of my past portraits I did this past weekend. These portraits are all shot on the Hasselblad 500cm. One was shot indoors with the Portra 400, and then one was shot outdoors with the Ektachrome. Both of these shoots involved natural lighting. I didn't bring in any artificial light. I didn't even have any diffusers or anything. So these photos will be pretty much as natural as they come in terms of colors and dynamic range and everything. And I'll give you guys my honest opinion of what I think about these film stocks. Again, this is not a very technical review. This is kind of more just my personal opinion and what I would recommend to someone asking me whether they should shoot it or not for portraits. But let's go ahead and see how these film stocks compare. All right, the first film stock we're gonna be going over is Portra 400. I'm sure you guys are all aware of this film stock. It's literally probably the most popular film stock on YouTube and Instagram. Some of your best photographers, Willem Verbeek, Joe Greer, Pauly B, all these guys are shooting on Portra, whether that be 400 or 800. And it's quite literally the most popular film stock of all time, I would say, in terms of color negative. That is because, as I said earlier, it's a color negative film that offers great exposure, latitude, and dynamic range, meaning you can overexpose it and underexpose it, and you'll still be able to retain a lot of information and be able to edit it to make it, look very usable in many cases. It also offers really true to life skin tones and natural colors. Super soft highlights, which is always going to give you kind of that dreamy film look. Very soft colors compared to Ultramax or Gold, which are a little more saturated. And it's pretty low contrast for what it is. I know a lot of the other film stocks, like Kodak film stocks, like Ultramax and Gold, are a little punchier. Portra is a little flatter, which allows you a little more, wiggle room for editing. And say you wanted to color grade or anything, it's a little bit better for that because it's meant for portraits. Also gives you that like classic Kodak warmth, which is great. And overall, just a great color negative film. I really don't have any issues with it. I mean, if I could use it forever. It is a little expensive. It's not like super cheap or anything, but on the spectrum of film prices, it's not like horrible. It's not as expensive as like Portra 800. I think a roll for Portra 400, at least here in Cincinnati, is like 15 bucks. So I mean, it's not horrible, but it could be a little cheaper, obviously. But the results of it are obviously beautiful natural tones with a slight golden warmth, a balanced color profile overall. And then even in the shadow areas, you can still retain a lot of the details, which is always super important. And overall, yeah, just a beautiful film stock. I would recommend it to anybody, beginner, intermediate, or pro. I've really never had any major issues with it, and I know exactly what my results are going to be normally when I do shoot it. So let's see how that compares to Kodak Ektachrome. All right, guys, up next is Ektachrome E100. As I said earlier, color positive slide film. Great slide film, honestly. There's not a whole lot of them available anymore. There's probably a few out there, but it's nice that it's a 100 speed film, which offers a little bit more flexibility than a lot of the other slide films being 50 ISO or even lower. So 100 speed is pretty nice. But unlike color negative film like Portra, it does not offer nearly as much dynamic range or exposure latitude. So that means when you're metering, you really got to be spot on and accurate, because if you meter for your highlights, chances are your shadows will be crushed and vice versa. So one problem I had with this shoot was I usually meter for people's skin tones, and a lot of these times in this shoot, their face or skin was in the highlights or in the sun. So a lot of my shadows ended up being crushed, unfortunately. But, with the low dynamic range, it's not horrible. Say you needed to bring it up like a stop or two, like you can probably pass it, but it doesn't look as good. If you're able to really nail that metering, your images can come out looking great, super saturated, super contrasty, very natural looking for the most part, very sharp. I mean, this is a 100 speed film, so I mean, there's almost no grain to it. It's probably honestly the sharpest film I've ever shot. And overall, just great film for portraits and everyday use. If you're able to get a shoot in with a lot of light, this film really feeds off of light for the most part. Your photos are going to be looking really good once you get them done and get them back. I would definitely recommend this film stock to anybody who's interested in trying it out. It's a great film for most occasions, I guess. I would not use it for street probably, unless I had a flash or some sort of way to balance out light, just because when you're shooting street, you come into different lighting scenarios that you can't really control for the most part. With portraits, you can at least kind of control your lighting and your output and everything. But yeah, it's a great film. One thing about it is pretty expensive. It's like $25 a roll here in Cincinnati. So I wouldn't use it for everyday kind of run-of-the-mill portrait work. But if you're trying to do some kind of more fun experimental photos, if you were using onboard or offboard flash, I think you can get some really cool results out of it, and that's another idea for a video I was thinking of down the line. But yeah, overall, great film stock, but definitely different from Portra 400. So let's go ahead and look at some of these differences. All right, guys, so now it's finally time to go ahead and look at these film stocks side by side, and I'll give you my final thoughts and review of these two films. Again, these are just my personal opinion on the film stocks, so take everything with a grain of salt. I'm not a professional. I just shoot film because I enjoy shooting film. But let's start out with Portra 400. Obviously, Portra 400, great film stock, offers a lot of natural colors, great flexibility and dynamic range, the classic warm Kodak look, which is awesome. On the other hand, if you look at the Ektachrome, it's definitely going to be sharper, a little bit more punchy, contrasty, more saturated, offer that crisp detail that slide film has been known for years, and offers great stunning results if you're able to properly meter and expose your photos. Just be careful though to expose it properly, obviously, because you don't want to destroy those highlights or shadows, because if you do, it's really hard to bring those back up. Personally, I think I'll continue shooting Portra 400 just due to it literally being a 400 speed film. That 400 ISO gives me a lot of flexibility to shoot indoors, outdoors, in most lighting scenarios be okay. With the 100 speed of Ektachrome, you're really limited to, spaces that offer a lot of light. A lot of places don't offer, indoors where I normally shoot doesn't offer the best lighting sometimes. But I'm definitely going to continue shooting it if I have my own lighting setup, external flash, and can kind of manipulate the light how I want it to look. I think Ektachrome would really do a good job in that kind of scenario. I would say that if you're looking to save money, probably shoot Portra. It's a little cheaper, $15 versus $25 for Ektachrome. Obviously, that's a whole roll of film difference. So I mean, if Ektachrome honestly wasn't so expensive, I probably would shoot it more. But a good alternative to Ektachrome, if you really like that kind of punchy, fine-grained, sharp look for color negative, is Kodak Ektar. Ektar is not horribly expensive either, and it's 100 speed, great detail, great sharpness. Ektar tends to lean on the more red-pink side, where Ektachrome leans much more on the cooler blue tones. But all in all, they're very similar film stocks in terms of saturation and contrast. But yeah, I would say Portra 400, definitely a very easy to shoot film, where Ektachrome is much more of an advanced film, I would say, in terms of just properly metering and exposing it. But both offer great, stunning results. So let me know down in the comments if you guys have ever shot with these film stocks, what your opinions are on them. Go ahead and let me know any ideas for upcoming videos you guys have. We got a couple of cool ideas for reviews for new film stocks coming up. We've got some ADOX 50 black and white reversal film, which is pretty interesting. I'd love to do a portrait shoot with that. And then we also have the new Ilford Ilfasol vintage color film. I've actually never shot on it before, so you can get our first reactions on that potentially. But yeah, thanks again for watching. Go ahead and like, subscribe, comment, and we'll catch you guys in the next video. See you guys.